good source of protein for astronauts. Wang also said the team is eyeing to scale up the experiment in the future, where fish can live a whole life cycle in space, from egg to another egg. 深夜40天酒泉甘肃 Province.
So, Professor Sui, you're pretty excited about the studies on zebrafish in space. What kind of real life implications would that have on our daily lives?
So, as we discussed, I think about 2 hours ago, that this experiment is very excited, is bringing this very vibrant fish to the space. So, zebrafish is a very important animal model for biological study. In the field of animal study, we have fruit flies, zebrafish, mice to be the very standard used animals to study a variety of different diseases and also biological processes of animals. And zebrafish as the very simple but also very close to our human beings vertebrate. Yeah, so it's a vertebrate comparing to fruit flies. They are non-vertebrates. But in the future, we may have more complicated, complex biological systems in the space. But this is actually a very important and very complex species in the space. As the reporter mentioned, is we actually share 80% of our genes with zebrafish. And zebrafish, our scientists has already sequencing the whole genome of this animal. Yeah, so the study of this animal can go into very details on the behavior level, on their mechanics and biological micro scale level, and also on the very micro, about their genes, about their molecules on that level too.
What other studies or scientific experiments have caught your eye?
The others are some stem cell experiments. Although those I would expect one day there are animal stem cell experiments, but right now they're doing plants stem cell experiments in space, because on Earth we know that stem cells are the very important cells that can grow into any specific cell type. Into our body or into the animal or the plant, right? So understanding their behavior besides our regular gravity condition in those microgravity space would probably lead to some new findings on how they grow and how they prosper. Yeah, and probably will lead to a future of, say, better economy of plants. Yeah.
Now, other than these scientific experiments, another major task for these crew members are major maintenance upgrades, right? They would use some of the spacewalks to do some maintenance work and make the spacecraft more collision-proof and crash-proof. Talk to us.
But still recovered the function of the solar panels by our EVA. But you cannot be sure that for the next 10 years, some of the space debris may hit the critical parts of our Tiangong space station. We have a lot of pipes, cables, and other critical things outside our station. And the important thing is that these parts are very critical for the normal operation of our space station. Also, that during the live coverage of the EVA of the previous missions before, we have the operation of mounting some motors for the cooling system of Tiangong space station, some pumps. And these pumps are also very important to keep the thermal control or keep the temperature very normal inside the station. But you know that there are coolant inside these pipes. If it was heat, there will be leakage. Very, very terrible. So we must protect these pipes and also some very critical cables, either for the maintenance or for the scientific research. So what you mentioned, this step is very, very necessary. So this will be one of the major tasks of our Shenzhou 18 crew. I believe that they've already been well trained for this.
Yeah, as you were speaking, we were looking at live pictures near the launch pad. There were huge crowds of people watching, waiting for the liftoff, watching the historic moment with us. Now, as we speak, the 3 astronauts are already in position, strapped in. Not much of movement there. They are quietly waiting for, the final procedures, the final checks up. We're approaching 15 minutes prior to launch.
Yes.
And you mentioned Shenzhou 17 crew, right? The Shenzhou 18 crew will be welcomed by their peers from the Shenzhou 17
there
crew.
is a very, very interesting experience of the Shenzhou, actually speaking, Shenzhou 17 crew and Shenzhou 16 crew. You know that during the launch of the Shenzhou 17 spacecraft, you know that Shenzhou 16 crew is watching the live coverage inside Tiangong Space Station. And when your colleagues of the CMG see this video, and she, actually Ms. Lao Chunyan, say hello to Mr. Jing Haipeng, the commander. And it is very interesting that Jing Haipeng react to her greeting. So
It's
this
like
shows that the communication between our Tiangong Space Station and the ground is already very, very powerful now.
Very smooth connection there. I'm sure the Shenzhou 17 crew are watching
The live coverage.
the live coverage of this launch as well. With our Mandarin service, we might be able to see them later in the program. Very exciting moments.
Yeah, because you know that we have the Tianlian data relay satellite. At this moment, we have both the first generation and the second generation Tianlian data relay satellite. So we can have multiple video streams, very high definition video streams, multiple from the cameras mounted in everywhere inside our Tiangong Space Station to give these videos to the ground. So we can, during this live coverage, not only the astronaut inside our Tiangong Space Station can see the launch procedure, but also we can see they are watching the live coverage.
Yeah, so the Shenzhou 17 crew and Shenzhou 18 crew will conduct another in-orbit handover.
Yes.
So we will see 6 astronauts in the space station at a time. Would that be a challenge?
This will be the 4th time we see this historical moment between the Shenzhou 17 crew and the Shenzhou 18 crew. That will be a very exciting moment, but not so exciting as the first one, because you know that we've already been very practical for this procedure, and also you know that to support and to realize this moment, we need the support from the what we call the regenerative environmental control and life support system, because it is it can recycle all the resources, the water, oxygen, and so on. So at this moment, still you can see, usually in most cases, we can see the video camera mounted inside our re-entry capsule. Usually the commander and his companions usually sometimes read the manuals. You may notice that the manual not only includes the operations, the guidance of what they should do next, but also it has information, very necessary information when something wrong happens, what they should do.
Yeah, that's a call out. T-minus 15 minutes. And we've noticed that all the Shenzhou 18 crew were selected from 2010 and 2020. That's the second batch and the third batch of astronauts. And we're hearing words that the selection process for the 4th batch of astronauts will be finished soon. When do you think these new taikonauts will start their mission?
调度直通波金山，
金山明白，
华山，
华山明白。
You know, that's during the 3rd batch of our astronauts, we will already have flight engineers and payload experts. Mr. Gui Haichao from the Beihang University is the first payload expert. So in the future, because our technology becomes more and more practical and the Shenzhou space becomes more and more comfortable, so I believe professors like Mr. Sui maybe will be more and more of these scientists like him to go to the outer space.
Like a payload expert.
And according to authorities, it's very likely that these new astronauts could be a part of the moon landing mission in the very near future.
Well, according to Mr. Yang Liwei, our first astronaut, he mentioned to the major media of China that all the astronauts chosen for the human missions to the moon will first have their experience inside our Tiangong space station. So this is a necessary requirement raised by ourselves.
Yeah.
I believe, as I mentioned, their experience in the Tiangong space station for half a year will be very, very helpful for them for the future moon missions, although the procedure is quite different.
And there were several candidates from Hong Kong and Macau making it to the final stages of the selection process. So, you know, we could see new astronauts from these regions very soon. Let's get more updates from the launch pad. We can now go live to our reporter, Sun Ye. Sun Ye, great to see you. Also, Huang Yue is joining us from the Beijing Aerospace Control Center. Hey, great to see you too. So let's start with Sun Ye. Walk us through the preparations prior to the launch. We're getting really close. How are the astronauts doing now?
Hey there, Joya, and hello again. Yes, the preparation is going at the last stage right now. It's minus 15 minutes until the launch, so throughout the last half an hour or so, we're seeing the last fires of cars leaving, and that means the rocket and everything in it is pretty much on its own, and they are ready. And then the astronauts, we earlier checked in with an expert with the astronaut system, and he said the Shenzhou 18 crew, they're doing fine. They're breathing all right. Their heart rates are fine. Now, this is only probably the only chance we'll get to see the rocket here in its whole, and this spectacular scene. I think maybe it's all right if we take around a minute or so to have a good look, a last look at it before it goes up to space. Now, this Long March 2F manned carrier rocket, it's actually it actually came in compartments, in pieces, and was carried by train from northern China to here in Jiuquan in northwest China. And I think you're getting a better picture than me now, and I'm going to walk you through how this beautiful rocket is put together. Now, the first step is to put the corn stage 1. That's the first thing to get stable, and then the 4 boosters, they are then attached to it, and then that's the corn stage 2. The spaceship along with the fairing, they are close together in another place before they are transported to meet the other 2 stages already done. And the last item in that assembly is the escape tower. Now, the rocket has been in great condition ever since that assembly, and we have seen it rolled out earlier last week. And ever since then, it's checks and rechecking done by people across the systems. We also just talked to an expert with the rocket system. His work up until now is still checking that the rockets are fine, and the rocket is fine, and the spaceship is fine so far as we know. So everything is set for the launch that's happening in a few minutes.
Thank you very much. And as you were speaking, Sun Ye, the launch time has been adjusted, has been moved up a little bit, just a little bit. Now, turning to you, Huang Yue, the Beijing Aerospace Control Center is overseeing Shenzhou 18's launch. What's the latest there?
Yes, Joey, and the launch time is just around the corner, only a few minutes left. So here in the Beijing Aerospace Control Center, every staff member is busy making the last-minute preparations, as it's the command and information exchange center to ensure that every step and every aspect of the mission runs smoothly. So we're now actually on the 3rd floor of the center, and on the 1st floor is the ground control team, and which is mainly responsible for the control and command over all working systems, such as those on the rockets, the spacecraft, the space station, and the launch site. And actually, if you and our audience once followed our previous missions, you might have already known that this team has a very special nickname called Beijing Copy, because this phrase once became so popular on Chinese social media platforms because it's going to be used so frequently and repeatedly in the hall after launching. And actually, I arrived here hours earlier before the launch because, to be honest, this is also the first time for me to cover the launch mission. So I came here earlier trying to get more familiar with the situation. And one of the things that impressed me the most is that the team members here are quite young, and many of them are in their 30s or even 20s. So you can tell that people born in the 1990s have already become the main workforce for China's aerospace industry, and they're so calm and confident. It doesn't mean that they won't get nervous. Of course they could be, but they won't show that because they've already had vigorous trainings and tests, and they are professional enough, they are intelligent enough to deal with any situation. So from them you can see a very promising future for China's aerospace industry. And in addition to the ground control team, behind me there were two screens. As you can see, one shows the launch site and the other one shows a return capsule, and inside there are three taikonauts, the Shenzhou 17 crew members, and they are making the final preparation and waiting for their colleagues to come and meet with them. And I was told that they can actually watch the live broadcast of the mission, but of course they are watching the CCTV 30, the Mandarin channel. But next time I do suggest that they watch CGTN special live coverage, because I'm not worried about their language skills. And I believe they must also be very excited, because after a 6-month business trip to space, on the end of this month, they will come down back to Earth and they will meet their friends, families, and colleagues. Back to you, Qiuyuan.
Thank you very much. Huang Yue live for us in Beijing there. Now, medical protective measures are important for taikonauts to stay in space for a long time. And for the Shenzhou 18 mission, these are already in place. Li Yinghui, Deputy Chief Designer of the Astronaut System of China's Manned Space Program, explains how these measures keep taikonauts healthy in space.
For the Shenzhou 18 mission, we took personalized medical protection measures to keep our taikonauts healthy. This proved effective in the second space trip for Ye Guangfu this time. What's more, for this mission, we conducted a series of medical experiments in space. They cover several aspects. For example, we've done in-depth research on health assessment model building on the known risks. They will enrich our established knowledge, technical reserves, and database. They will also provide us more theoretical and technical support. We also use traditional Chinese medicine like acupoint therapy, which adds to the healthy protection for taikonauts.
For those of you who just joined us, you're watching our special coverage of the Shenzhou 18 launch. We're less than 15 minutes to go till the launch, and as our Sun Yan earlier mentioned, all the ground staff have pulled back already. And but the rocket's still attached. Is it? Is it still attached to the launch tower? It's not running on its own just yet.
You may notice that the rotational arms in the middle of the rocket is still connected to attached to the launch vehicle. So which means that still we have the cables provide the electricity to the launch vehicle, and also maybe about 3 minutes, 5 or 3 minutes, some of the arms will leave the launch vehicle and the launch vehicle will stand on its own. But you know that I can still still notice that when you talk with Ms. Sun Ye, I noticed that the commander and also his crew members are still reading the manual very carefully. Also, you know that yesterday during the conference, when the crew member meet with the media, you know that they are full of confidence, but they are not so very careful and be aware of what the challenge they will face. So, like their previous crew members, they are reading their manual. As I mentioned, not only the normal operations and the normal procedure, but also all the conditions they must possibly to be faced. So this is this shows that they are very, very professional.
Yeah, we're approaching T-minus 5 minutes.
Okay.
There you go, the call out.
So in the coming minutes, we will have several very, very important steps, as we've already discussed. The transfer of power supply from the ground to the launch vehicle itself, and also the activation of the what we call the guidance, navigation, and control system, or the GNC system. And also, as we've already heard many times, the commander in Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center, usually we call that the Commander Zero.
Well, they've put down their face shield.
Okay, they close the face mask of the helmet. So at this moment, they have formed the second airtight sealings to as a backup measure to ensure their safety.
And they're still looking at their manuals. What kind of things are on their checklist? You would assume?
There are all kinds of instructions on if you met this problem, how to solve it, how to do any right operation or the right choice.
Yeah, and it's usually very quiet at a launch control around this time as we're getting really close to time zero. Not so much calm going on there except for a few simple commands and the final countdown. And that's because the final status checks by now, most of them have been completed, so that's a good sign. You don't want to hear too much noises around this time.
Yep. And also, you know that today in the Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center and in other launch sites of China, we also use UAV, unmanned air vehicle, to give a good sight of the launch, the whole launch procedure itself. And also, in every live coverage, we can see from our CGTN coverage, we can see the videos from the cameras mounted on the launch vehicle. So that's also a very good reference for us to ensure the status of the launch vehicle and also everything goes okay.
And you're looking at the launch control. T-minus 3 minutes. I suppose everybody is going through their own task procedure for a final time in their mind. Super focused because this is a teamwork, right? Everybody needs to do their job perfectly right to make sure we have a good launch. Quite a nerve-wracking moment for the flight crew, for the whole launch team.
You may notice that
all of us were watching.
Rotational arms, some of the rotational arms will begin to move from the fuselage of the rocket. We also mount cameras to monitor the status of these rotational arms because there are very important cables and pipes connected to the launch vehicle.
What do you think is going through the astronaut's mind? I think as much as this is the moment for excitement, this could be a moment for anxiety.
You know,
too.
that they have been trained many, many times for this. You know, that from the experience, not to be Chinese astronauts, some of my friends, the foreign astronauts, they said they cannot distinguish from a simulation or a real one. So this shows that they've been trained so intensively. And the simulation is feels so real.
To it.
Today, with the VR and AR technology, it becomes more real than before.
Yeah. And really, there's not much they can do for this short period of time. They're being strapped in, things are out of their hands. They're basically relying on their team to get them out there safely.
Usually, they will salute before the, maybe several seconds before the liftoff.
We're approaching T-minus 2 minutes, I guess.
Yep. This is a beautiful evening of Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center.
各号注意，我是领号，1分钟准备。
各号注意，1分钟准备。
1 minute out. An incredible moment to witness. Truly a magnificent view.
50秒。
Yeah, the weather is a bit cloudy in Jiuquan, so the reporter mentioned that we may or may not see the moon.
40秒。
Yeah.
The rotational arms have already been rotated.
So the umbilicals just pulled away. This is some riveting feed there. You can see the Shenzhou 17
Yeah, as we
crew.
mentioned, they are watching the live coverage.
Yeah. And they have decorated the space station a little bit, put up welcome banners.
Yeah.
20秒。20秒。
20 seconds to go. It's a go for the launch. The Shenzhou 18 is just seconds away from blastoff. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
点火。
Ignition. And at the moment, 20 seconds after the liftoff, we will have a pitch over, which means that the flight direction will change from a vertical one to the horizontal one, to the eastward.
So just a spectacular view there.
Yeah, you can see the 8 engines working very perfect.
And you can hear the voices from the launch team providing tracking status, saying things are going good, and that's
Great.
like
We can see the videos from the camera mounted, looking backwards.
So these are the side boosters.
Yeah, we can see 2 of the side boosters. And at about, okay, I believe this moment already the pitch over has already been accomplished.
So if things goes well, we could see the escape tower being detached in just a few minutes.
We just heard that the ground stations report that everything goes okay, the flight is normal.
And we can see both the infrared image and the optical image.
Exactly. So at the moment of the 120 seconds will be the critical step to jettison the escape tower.
So the escape tower is essentially a small solid fuel rocket set on top of the capsule. In the event of an emergency, such as an impending explosion, it'll pull the capsule far enough away from the launch vehicle to allow for a normal parachute land.
Because at the moment of 2 minutes, it's already high enough, so we don't need the escape tower. But still, we have emergency escape engines on the payload ferry. We can see that during the live coverage previously. We can see the trail, as you mentioned, on this maybe infrared image.
Yeah, if it's during the day, we could see it very clearly, but because it's dark.
But we don't have other choices because of the launch window just lie in this moment.
Yeah, so we're relying on the infrared image now. Another critical step coming up very soon.
At the moment, 153 minutes. Okay, great.
Oh, that's the call out.
The emergency escape tower has already separated, and then will be the separation of the 4 boosters.
So you saw a bright flash over there. The emergency escape system have been separated, indicating the initial low-level flight went pretty well.
Yeah, it's already supersonic now. Great.
Booster separation.
The separation of 4 boosters, and then the separation of the first stage.
Immediately.
助推器分离。
We have the first stage separation. A successful separation.
Great. And the next critical step will be the separation of the payload ferries.
In the fast few minutes, we've seen a series of fast maneuvers and status reports there.
Now the combination of the Shenzhou spacecraft and the launch vehicle is flying eastwards. Oh, this is video cameras mounted on the rear part of the second stage. And this camera is inside the payload ferry, looking forward. You can see that's okay.
There you have it.
The separation of the payload ferry.
Roughly 4 minutes into the flight, we are seeing fairing jettison. So now the spacecraft is exposed in space.
I
just heard the voice of Mr. Ye Guangfu, the commander. He reported that the payload fairings, now they can see the sightseeing outside. But I believe 02 and 03 have a better view.
Yeah, they've got a window seats.
Yeah. But there is no aisle seat.
I wonder what they could see from their windows now.
Usually, in the previous missions, sometimes they can entering the sunshine areas, but this moment they are still in the shadow areas of the Earth.
So in about a few minutes, we're going to see the second stage rocket being dropped. So
well, the second stage works much longer than the first stage, more than 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Now you can see this is the camera, the video camera mounted on the second stage.
Is this the time that the crew will feel maximum G-forces?
Usually that happens
right before
at the separation of stages, because at the moment the thrust has a certain number, but you know that with the fuel becomes less and less, and the acceleration becomes greater and greater. Usually at the separation of the first stage or the separation at the second stage, they will experience the maximum peak of the G-forces.
So you might want to take a look at these astronauts and see just whether it'll show on their face or through their body gesture.
But the 3 to 4G is not a big problem for them.
It's nothing
They'll
for them.
be trained for up to 8 to 10 Gs. And even in 8 to 10 Gs, they can do the right operations.
So the highest G load they're going to feel is around
10. In abnormal
during
cases.
the flight?
No, in this normal flight,
5G?
usually 3.6.
Okay, that's not so bad.
Not so bad.
But that's already a large number for our normal people. Imagine you have 3 more people on yourself, right? So that's the loading.
Usually, how would your body react to that many G-forces?
Usually, you just need to say activate more muscles. You recruit more muscle activity to work against that overgravity.
Is there anything that they can do now to offset the effect of high G-forces?
I think the design of their seat and their body posture is already very helpful for them to remove the extra forces. Yeah. So if everything's normal, as we just heard, they are actually in a quite comfortable condition. Yeah, as they are very used to those in their everyday training. Yeah.
Now we can see on the left of the screen is the video camera mounted on the second stage looking backwards. Our second stage of the Long March 2F rocket have one main engine with a thrust about 80 tons. And also we have 4 vernier engines which control the attitude and the direction. So you can see the video camera monitoring the proper working of these rocket engines. Very bright. But this moment is already out of the atmosphere. Okay. Still, the Shenzhou 17 crew is watching the live coverage. They will meet after 6 or 7 hours.
Very soon, very soon.
I believe our Shenzhou 17 crew have already prepared the breakfast for our Shenzhou 18 crew.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
And I suppose in a few minutes after the second stage shut down, we are going to see things starting to drift, starting to float.
But you know that the normal procedure is that we first shut down the main engine. Still, the 4 vernier engines works, and we will adjust the trajectory. Okay, as I mentioned, the main engine shut off, and the 4 vernier engines still working, and we will adjust the trajectory very precisely. So after several seconds, after we have already entered the right orbit, we will shut down the vernier engines, and then will be the separation of the spacecraft.
Yeah, so it looks like the astronauts are feeling a bit more at ease now.
Yes, because you know that because the shutdown of the main engine, the G-forces is not so remarkable now.
Yeah, as the environment is changing from high G-forces to microgravity conditions.
So when the shutdown of the vernier engine, they will experience 0 G.
Yeah, so things will start to be floating if you watch closely. Oh, that's the shot of the solar panel.
Yeah, it's still folded now.
So the next critical step would be
the shutdown of the vernier engines. Okay. You can see on the bottom right is a 3D simulation, but this simulation is based on the real data, which means that the position, the attitude of the launch vehicle is representing the real status. So you can see the second stage works much longer than the first one because the thrust is much smaller. We have 2 solar wings and each have 4 panels.
I think for the 2 new astronauts, Li Guangxiu and Li Qiu, this will be a very exciting moment.
Changjiang is a space tracking ship. The code, I believe it will be Yuanwang 7 space tracking ship. It's in the Pacific Ocean. And it's already started, look, on the simulation, we look at the dash lines. It's already started. Okay, great. Separation confirmed.
仪表显示船舰分离完毕. So you can get a really good look at the spacecraft now in that 3D animation. 3 modules, right? Talk to us about it.
Yeah. So the next critical step will be the unfolding of the solar panels. So only with this operation we can have continuous power supply for the Shenzhou spaceship.
So by now, the second stage is drifting away in space. The rocket has completed its tasks that send the spacecraft into the planned orbit successfully.
And also from the voice, we can hear that our Changjiang 7 or the Yuanwang 7 space tracking ship has already established stable communication with our Shenzhou spaceship.
And a big shout out to the Shenzhou 17 crew. They're watching us.
Yeah, they are more relaxed.
Because they will be getting back to Earth in a few
But
days.
actually, I believe they will not sleep this night because they will be very, very exciting. There are visitors.
Yeah, they'll be back in about 5 days.
Yeah.
And I believe they will bring very fresh food for them.
And they've also made rooms for their friends.
There are 6 bedrooms inside of 3 in the Tiangong 1 comma.
长江7号跟踪正常，遥测信号正常。
But in the China's tradition, we don't have a 0G indicator. Usually in other countries, they have some toy to be the 0G indicator to show it's floating everywhere.
The ground team is confirming the status with the crew and confirming status of the spacecraft.
And Mr. Ye Guangfu, the commander, and Mr. Tang Hongbo, the commander of the Shenzhou 17 crew, both come from the second mission. And this are their second flight mission.
顶山收到，东风。东风收到。3、2、1。
With the separation of the end stage of the rocket, the Shenzhou 18 spacecraft is already in orbit. So next, our ground team will check the accuracy of the orbital parameters. If everything is accurate enough, we can announce that it is a successful launch.
北京明白。
长程报告，太阳帆板展开正常。
太阳帆板展开正常。
Great. The solar panels are unfolded very normally.
And what comes after this? What comes next?
Next will be the examination of the, as I mentioned, we will double check or even triple check with different data resources to check the accuracy of the orbital parameters. Because this accuracy is very critical for us to chasing the Tiangong space station and the dock visit.
So we cannot just declare the success just yet. We have to wait for...
We just heard his voice that the antenna for the data relay satellites has already been unfolded very normally. You know that we have a small device to keep connection with our data relay satellite, but we also have a high gain antenna which can send videos from this antenna to the Tianlian data relay satellite. This is also very important for us.
That's a big improvement compared to previous missions.
And it also ensures the very reliable connection between the ground stations and our ground centers to our Shenzhou spacecraft. You know, every mission is risky because, you know, that there are so many uncertainties. So keep a very smooth communication with the Space Flight Center, Control Center will be a very good insurance to keep the success of our flight mission.
Now looking at the 3 astronauts...
神舟18号，我是北京。
Let's listen in.
神舟18号到。通报座舱大气环境及身体情况。神舟18号明白。
We've just heard ground control exchanging a few words with the flight commander, trying to confirm their status.
Air quality.
Yeah, so Ye Guangfu just said...
feeling good.
Yeah, they're feeling okay. They're feeling good.
长城，我是北京，通报座舱环境。
And the internal environment inside the spacecraft is also good.
北京明白。 神舟18号，我是北京，经地面确认，座舱环境正常，可以打开面窗。
神舟18号明白。
We have a very important, very critical subsystem called the atmospheric control system. So as mentioned we heard the voice that the atmosphere inside the cabin is good. So they can open their face mask.
Yep. Another critical step.
You can see they are still busy reading their menu.
Yeah. I mean, a pretty young team we're looking at, in their 30s, 40s. Is this a trend? Are we going to see younger and younger astronauts in the future?
Yeah, I think we're looking forward to see the younger generation of astronauts. They are taking charge of more and more launching missions.
But what's considered as a prime age range for astronauts? Or there's no such thing?
I think it depends from
倾角41.5度，周期1小时30分钟的预定轨道，飞船座舱环境正常，航天员状态良好。北京出轨根数及分离点参数已向各方向发出。东风明白。华山。
We've already got the multiple parameters as announced by the Beijing Flight Control Center. So the perigee is 200 kilometers, and the apogee is 356 kilometers, and the inclination is 41.5 degrees. So it's a very accurate launch.
It'll take an hour and a half, right, for them.
So they will spend 6.5 hours in orbit to chase our Tiangong space station and finally dock to the docking port at the bottom of our node.
And that'll be an automated rendezvous?
In normal cases, it will be automatic one. But if anything wrong happens to the automated docking system, as you mentioned, we will switch to the manual docking. And all these crew members were well trained for this operation.
This is the Beijing Aerospace Flight Center. So after the launch, they will be taking over the monitoring job. We're still standing by for an official confirmation declaring the launch as a success.
After coming into orbit of our Shenzhou spacecraft, the control will be switch from our Jiutian Satellite Launch Center to Beijing Flight Control Center.
So Beijing will take over.
Yeah.
Right.
I guess the ground team are doing some calculations, maybe some adjustment burns
exactly.
for the spacecraft.
As I mentioned, they based on different data resources to confirm the accuracy of each orbital parameter to ensure that it is accurate enough. Because as we've already discussed, the Shenzhou spacecraft must enter the same orbital plane of our Tiangong space station. So this is the most essential and most important requirement to its accuracy. And then, because it is now lower than our Tiangong space station, so it orbiting the Earth faster than our Tiangong space station. So it is a chasing vehicle, and it come closer and closer, and after 6.5 hours, we will dock together.
天路跟踪正常，遥测信号正常。天路跟踪正常。
Tianlu is another name of our Tianlian data relay satellite system. So at this moment, it's already out of the coverage of our space tracking ship, and it is mainly based on our Tianlian data relay satellite. As we've already heard the voice, that the high gain antenna has already been unfolded. So at this moment, we can transfer not only the voices, but also can transfer the videos from our cabin of our Shenzhou spacecraft.
Right. You know, China has this three-step strategy for its space exploration. And third phase, which is the last phase, is building its space station. Can we say that we've met that target? What's next for our space exploration?
Yes, we've already accomplished this step. And next, as we mentioned, we are now in the phase of utilization and development. But still, we have a lot of work in the future. For instance, our Tiangong space station will be expanded, doubled in the future.
We're now joined by Professor Mark McCaugh-Green, a former senior advisor for science and exploration at the European Space Agency in the Netherlands. Great to have you with us, Professor. Now, the Shenzhou 18 has just launched. We are standing by for an official confirmation of the launch success. But what significance does it have for space exploration?
Well, assuming everything's gone well, which it sounds like it has, congratulations to the crew and everybody involved. Going back to the space station, of course, you have 3 astronauts there already waiting for them, and then you will change the crew for another 6-month expedition, as they're often called, on the Chinese space station. This is very similar to what we've been doing for many years, of course, with the International Space Station. And as one of your speakers there just said, this is about building capacity, expanding the space station, and doing research and development, both on the space station, scientifically, doing interesting things there. In fact, one thing, as an astronomer, one thing I'm really excited about is the Zhuntian space telescope, which should be launched to Tiangong, not docked to it, but nearby to it, and doing some very interesting scientific astronomy experiments over the years to come. But it's about that development, building the station, making it an efficient place to do science, but also looking forward, I imagine, to the moon and Mars.
Now, China has said astronauts from other countries are welcome to go to the China space station. It says it is committed to the peaceful development in space. How would you assess prospects for international collaboration in space exploration?
Well, that's a very interesting question, of course, particularly given the current geopolitical context. Without going into too much depth, the world is not perhaps in a happy place at the moment. And exactly how nations decide to collaborate on many things, of course, is something which is constantly in focus politically. And space is a political thing. We should never just think of it in terms of science or exploration. There is a strong political element. But I think it's also worth looking back to the past and looking, for example, at the Apollo-Soyuz test project in the 1970s, and the space station itself, the International Space Station, where, of course, the United States and Russia at the moment have grave differences over the war in Ukraine, but are still collaborating in space. So it's not an easy thing to see into the future and see how that international collaboration may also include China. But I'm optimistic that we'll find ways of doing that, because the things we want to do in space are incredibly challenging and do indeed need to bring nations together to solve some of those problems. And those problems then reflect on the Earth. We have problems on the Earth we need to solve. So being able to collaborate internationally in space also might give us hope we can collaborate internationally, for example, on climate change. So I think it's a tricky question, but let's be optimistic and see that we can actually work together.
Yeah, let's be optimistic. Thank you very much, Professor Mark McCaugh-Green. Thank you very much for taking the time talking to us. We appreciate your perspectives. Now, Yang Liwei, the Deputy Chief Designer of China's manned space program, talked to CGTN reporter Zheng Yibing on international cooperation in space programs, including China's manned lunar landing. Listen in.
From the perspective of manned spaceflights, international cooperation is a well-established practice. It is true for our country and also space powers like the United States and Russia, which are cooperating even under such tense international circumstances. So we actually, from the early days till now, when we have a space station, have been seeking cooperation even though there's a lot of international constraint. Therefore, we took a path of self-reliance. For manned lunar landing, we discussed its feasibility around 2010 and 2011, and we're looking for international cooperation. We hope that different countries and institutions can join us in the whole lunar landing program, complement each other's efforts, promote the development of this cause, and explore the unknown for human beings. So I hope more countries and institutions will join us.
Stay with us for more of our live coverage on the Space Shenzhou 18 launch mission. And now for more on the top stories making headlines around the world. benefits that comes from China's space program, right? China's satellite services, including a Fengyun satellite or a meteorological satellite or a Beidou navigation satellite system, they collectively serve hundreds of millions of users. How would you assess the global benefits of such services?
Yeah, the global, I think the global commercial markets would be very welcome to see that besides the GPS system, we have multiple different choices, that can provide a different level of services. So this would be very helpful, I think, globally to provide extra value besides what we've already had.
Now, to learn more about the spacecraft carrying out the Shenzhou 18 mission, our reporter Zheng Yibin talked to a senior researcher for the spacecraft system.
The Shenzhou 18 is a third manned spacecraft for mission to China's space station. It has the same design as Shenzhou 16, 17, and the following 19 spacecraft.
From the general technical state, there are the orbital module, the re-entry module, and the propellant module. And there are solar panels and the engines. They are consistent with the previous technological designs.
The biggest difference this time is upgrade to the spacecraft's battery, replacing the cadmium nickel battery with lighter and smaller lithium one, which has a much longer life.
The Shenzhou spacecraft as a manned vehicle requires the highest safety and reliability. The upgrade to the battery has been fully verified in our space station, cargo ships, and other spacecraft.
There were also small modifications, like a little more space for space science experiments. And Chen Tongxiang explained how Shenzhou 18's flight will go.
It is the 7th manned flight for China's space station. After liftoff from Zhouquan, it will fly for 6.5 hours and make orbital transfer, and then the fast rendezvous and docking with the space station. Shenzhou 18 crew will rotate with Shenzhou 17 crew and stay in the station for 6 months and then return.
For this mission, the Shenzhou spacecraft system has been working day and night to make sure the flight goes smoothly. Zheng Yibin, CCTN in Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center.
The Shenzhou 18 crew is taking a self-sufficient ecosystem with it to the China space station. The experiment they would be working on involved the second most complex vertebrate the space station has ever seen. Arsenia has the report.
4 zebrafish, 2 females, 2 males, a bunch of hornwort. In a watertight fish tank the size of 2 or 3 water bottles, China space station's first experiment on vertebrates other than human beings looks something like this. The project on aquatic life support system in space is part of the many science studies the Shenzhou 18 mission will undertake. Professor Wang Gaohong, one of the scientists behind this lively experiment, says the aim is to keep the small ecosystem self-sufficient, where the homeward conducts photosynthesis with LED light and let the fish be alive and happy for a month. So happy that they may lay eggs.
Taikonauts would take care of the fish tank. For instance, if the fish lay eggs, they will help in collecting the eggs. They will also take water samples. We will monitor the changes in the water samples. We will also videotape the fish tank and see how the fish behave.
Wang said the scientists prefer that the group stays limited to 4, lest a bigger crowd crashes the system. But even if it's small size-wise, the self-circulating ecosystem could be telling the scientists something big.
Zebrafish are lab rats in water, and they're quite close to us humans. They share over 80% of our genes. Some human diseases can be studied using zebrafish as model organisms. Since water occupies such a large part of our Earth, in the long term, the study of this aquatic ecosystem would help us better understand the Earth's ecosystem.
In time, the experiment could also lead to some real-life use in space. Wang said fishes are efficient sources of food, and if they can be farmed in space, they could be a good source of protein for astronauts. Wang also said the team is eyeing to scale up the experiment in the future, where fish can live a whole life cycle in space, from egg to another egg. 专业40天酒泉甘肃 Province.
The Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center is home to China's first space mission. More than 6 decades later, it has evolved into a key place for China's quest into space. Our reporter Zheng Yibing is at the launch center to give us a glimpse of its past, present, and the future.
China has been pursuing its space dreams and reaching one goal after another. But do you know where all these have evolved from? With this question, I came here, the Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center in northwestern China. On April 24, 1970, China's first satellite Dongfang 1 was launched from here into space. To honor this, April 24 was later celebrated as China's Space Day. I followed a staff member here to explore the history of this launch center.
这是中国的第一个发射塔架，它呢叫5020工位，也是我们国家的东方红卫星呢第一个东方红卫星升起的地方。可以看到，你看那个对面还有一个塔架，它呢叫138工位。这两个塔架呢分别建成于1966年和1971年。从建成到现在呢，一共是发射了44次任务，其中最有名的呢就是我们的第一个东方红卫星、第一次返回式卫星，还有第一次远程运载火箭。第一次对外搭载和一箭三星这5次发射任务是这个发射场的一个最有这个标志性的这个5个大的事件，可以说中国航天进步的每一步都在这里留下了它的印记。
And then, new launch towers were built at the launch center. This is the only launch pad in China for manned space missions. It has been in operation for 25 years and now is a backbone for missions to China's space station.
这座塔架是1994年开工建设，1997年竣工，1999年首次执行神舟1号飞船任务，到现在已经使用了25年，圆满完成了20多次发射任务，把我国20名航天员、32人次安全送入太空。 我们每年都要对这座塔架进行全面细致的检修和维护。未来，我们要对这座塔架进行可靠性提升、智慧化升级等相关改造，确保圆满完成后续的发射任务。
Now the launch center is doing more than that. This is one of the launching complexes for the commercial aerospace companies. Back in 2018, Landspace launched its first rocket here. Over the following years, more than 30 commercial rockets from 6 companies were launched from this area. Here are the commercial launch sites, creating a number of milestones, such as Tiangong 2, the first commercial liquid-fuel rocket in China to reach Earth's orbit by space pioneer; Zhuque 2, the world's first liquid oxygen methane powered rocket to put into orbit by Landspace; and the first stage of takeoff and landing tests for reusable commercial rockets. The quest continues. In the near future, the companies hope to become the dynamic force of China's space exploration. Zheng Yibing, CGTN, in Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center.
You're watching our special coverage of the Shenzhou 18 mission. Looks like you can already see the Earth from the spacecraft. Right? Looking at the live picture there.
I just heard the voice that the Beijing Flight Control Center asked the crew, they can open the hatch now. which means that they can enter the orbital module, which will be more comfortable.
Oh, so during the 6 hours time, they could move around between the re-entry module and the orbital module.
Exactly, because you know that the space will be much bigger for them.
Yeah.
So, more comfortable.
And it's getting brighter. You can see, right, sunlight from
actually speaking, with today, the lights inside our cabin is already more advanced than before, because today the semiconductor LCD lights are more practical than years before. But they are now preparing for the docking with rendezvous and docking with our Tiangong space station. So they will, I believe, they will also be very busy. You know that we will conduct several orbital maneuvers, most automatically, but the astronauts will monitor all these very critical procedures, which define the distance, the relative distance and relative position between the Tiangong space station and our shenzhou spacecraft.
And how difficult is the docking process?
We can still remember that during my first cooperation with CGTN, still called CCTV News before, we have the live coverage of the rendezvous and the docking procedure. And at that moment, because we haven't mastered this technology, we still do that very, very careful. And today, because it is very practical, as I mentioned, so this is the reason why we can conduct a faster rendezvous and docking. And also, you know, one of the Tianzhou spacecraft, maybe Tianzhou 4 or Tianzhou 5, conducted the fastest, only 2 hours from the launch to the docking of the Tiangong space station, also make a world record.
It's interesting that they can move around now.
We just heard that the power generation, the power supply is very normal.
So things are going well with the spacecraft. I mean, the space station is much bigger compared to what it was in the very beginning.
Yes, the 3 module, the inner volume is more than 110 cubic meters, so very, very big.
Will it be expanded into even
yes,
bigger
exactly.
one?
So in the future, we will dock another 2010 level module to the front or to the node. So the front docking port will be occupied, but with the fourth module, we will have more docking ports and berthing ports. So we will have more reliable redundant, because today we only have 3 docking ports of the whole station. The rear docking port usually is occupied by the Tianzhou.
根据北京实时遥测数据监视判断，飞船太阳帆板展开，工况正常，原导第一次变轨正常，后续工作按正常飞控计划实施。神舟18号。
神舟18号明白。
东风。
东风明白。
华山。
华山明白。
江阴。
江阴明白。
长城。
长城明白。
The Beijing Flight Control Center, the commander just announced that the power generation is normal, and also the first orbit maneuver, as we discussed, is also normal.
This is to better position the spacecraft to dock with Tiangong space
They
station.
will conduct from after they enter the orbit and before the docking, they will conduct several orbit maneuvers. Each one is critical. Each one is important. For them to chase our Tiangong space station.
And everyone is also keen to know when China will open its space station for international astronauts. By what stage will we see astronauts from other countries also living and working in the Tiangong space station alongside Chinese astronauts?
I believe we will see this within several years. You know that according to the announcement by...
Let's listen in. Sounds
we will
like
hear
that's
the
the
formal
official
announcement of the result.
Officials, experts. According to the Beijing Aerospace Control Center and the flight data and report, the Long March 2F Y-18 carrier rocket has sent Shenzhou 18 manned spacecraft to the preset orbit. The solar panels have been unfolded and are functioning well. I now declare the launch of Shenzhou 18 mission a complete success.
Beijing 明白。
There you have it, an official confirmation from the command center. The launch is a success. That was Zhou Lipeng, director of the Jiuquan Satellite Launch.